It's so glowy, Mike. Things are glowing.
Are you okay?
I'm okay. Glowing wonders.
Oh, I see. Glowing wonders.
Glow.
I was like, we're sitting in a brightly lit room. There's nothing glowing in here.
Fireflies and anglerfish
Yes.
shine. They glow. They absolutely glow. They are luminescent. We're going to talk about these two critters over the next couple of days. I find fireflies fascinating. I find anglerfish fascinating. And I find bioluminescence, which we will talk about today, where you have, organisms that produce light. I find that also fascinating. I was once sitting in the water in Philippines on a random night.
In the ocean?
In the ocean.
Oh, okay.
And all around me, things just started glowing. And that was the first time I had ever experienced bioluminescence.
Wow.
The zooplankton in the water were glowing beautiful, amazing, incredible blue. And it was absolutely fascinating. And I was doing a bit of a world tour at the time. And I sat there in awe and amazement. And I thought it was incredible. And from Philippines, I went to Thailand. From Thailand, I went to Nepal. And I was hiking up in, 4,000 or 5,000 meters. And one night in my sleeping bag, I saw bioluminescent zooplankton glowing in my sleeping bag because they just don't go away. And they can be everywhere. It's quite amazing.
Very cool. So you may have been lucky enough to see fireflies. I know that if you go into the mountains of Taiwan, even right close to a big city like Taipei here, you can see fireflies at certain times of year as you walk through the woods in the evening time. Anglerfish, I would guess most people have never seen one.
Yeah, probably
because
not.
as we're going to learn, they live deep below the surface of the ocean, way down there. You'd probably need a special submarine to see one. But both of them, along with some other animals like the plankton that you mentioned, have a way of naturally making their own light. This is not, of course, electric light made with batteries and, Thomas Edison's inventions or anything like that. No, this is natural light that glows and creates amazing effects at night. And it's kind of mysterious how, these animals can make light because humans can, but we need batteries and electricity. We can't do it naturally like the fireflies and the anglerfish do. So let's find out how they do that amazing thing. And we're going to begin today with the fireflies. So let's get to it.
Let's listen to the whole article one time. Glowing wonders, how fireflies and anglerfish shine. Certain creatures possess a remarkable ability to produce their own light. This glow, known as bioluminescence, is one of nature's most fascinating phenomena. Among the many glowing organisms on Earth, fireflies and anglerfish stand out as two prime examples. Though both exhibit bioluminescence, their lifestyles and reasons for glowing differ significantly. Fireflies, also known as lightning bugs, are insects found on every continent except Antarctica. They typically thrive in warm, humid environments such as forests, fields, and gardens. These glowing beetles are most visible at dusk during summer, especially in rural areas. Their light results from a chemical reaction between a compound called luciferin and an enzyme named luciferase. When these substances react with oxygen in specialized light organs, they produce a cold light that appears yellow, green, or pale red, depending on the species. Unlike artificial lights, which waste energy as heat, fireflies produce light without generating heat, making it energy efficient and safe for their delicate bodies. The glowing light of fireflies serves crucial purposes. First, it is a tool for communication, especially during mating season. Each species has its own unique flashing pattern to attract mates. These light signals are like romantic messages in the night. Furthermore, their glow can act as a warning to potential predators, indicating that they might taste bad or be toxic. Unfortunately, fireflies are facing serious threats from habitat destruction as wetlands disappear under urban development. Light pollution confuses fireflies and disrupts their mating signals, while pesticides and climate change further endanger their populations around the world. Conservation efforts are vital to protect these wonderful creatures. So, I like how this starts. Certain creatures, some things, some critters, possess, they have, they hold a remarkable ability to produce their own light. I think that's quite fascinating. They're all like little stars, right? Because a star can make its own light, not like planets that cannot. This glow, this light, is a pretty amazing thing. And some creatures possess it. They have it. They own it. They have the ability to do it. You can have possessions, which are things that you own. You can possess a certain amount of knowledge, which means you have a certain amount of intelligence in your brain. You hold that knowledge. You are smart. You can possess another person, which hopefully doesn't happen and hopefully gradually will never happen again in the world, but it does exist out there, which is a terrible thing. You can possess some composure, which just describes you as having that thing, that characteristic. So composure just meaning you're able to hold yourself very well. You're quite elegant or something, or you might not go out of your way to say rude things to people. So you hold that ability. You can hold an ability. You can hold, a possession. You can hold lots of different things. Here we have critters that are holding the ability to glow. And this glow is known as bioluminescence. So you're producing light through a chemical reaction. And you have this little bitty critter that is able to produce light. And you have these other bigger critters that are able to produce light. Bio being, of living things. Luminescence of being able to glow. Bioluminescence is the ability to grow. And it's one of nature's most fascinating phenomena. People don't really know why it happens. Scientists don't quite get it, but they know what the chemical process is, but they don't quite know why it happens.
All right. Among the many glowing organisms on Earth, fireflies and anglerfish stand out as two prime examples. So yes, bioluminescence, naturally creating light in living things. So from that, we get the idea that it's both plants and animals can do this. And as the next sentence says, many glowing organisms on Earth do exist. So an organism is a living thing, all right? So a really big organism would be a blue whale or an elephant or something like that, a very large, complicated organism. And then we can go right down to the other end of the scale and talk about a one-celled organism, a bacteria or something like that. That is also an organism. It is a living thing. So really, anything that exists in nature that is alive is an organism. So there are many of these types of things out there, both plant and animal. But of all the ones on Earth, all the things that live and glow on Earth, fireflies and anglerfish, they stand out. They're kind of notable, or at least more well-known as two prime examples. For example, sitting here, I can't think of a bioluminescent plant. But if you asked me for a bioluminescent animal, I think these would be the top two that I would probably mention or list as well. Maybe the lanternfish, which I think is also similar to an anglerfish.
Jellyfish,
living deep below the surface of the ocean. But of course, these are two well-known of the glowing organisms. It says, though both exhibit or both have or both are capable of bioluminescence.
Possess.
In the same way that we talk about possessing an ability, they exhibit the ability to create their own life or exhibit light or exhibit bioluminescence. Their lifestyles and reasons for glowing differ significantly. One is a small insect that lives above the surface of the water. The other one is a fish that lives deep below the surface of the water. So they both make light, but in very different ways and for very different reasons. And you notice I use the word different there. So when things are different, we can use the verb to differ. They differ in such and such a way. For example, I may have a younger brother, but we differ significantly. He's very artistic. I'm very business-minded. He's very tall. I'm very short. He likes vegetarian food. I love meat. That's talking about how things are different, how they differ, or, showing the ways that they are not quite the same. So let's talk about fireflies first.
Fireflies, also known as lightning bugs, are insects found on every continent except Antarctica. Antarctica being the southernmost continent, covered with a huge sheet of ice. They typically thrive in warm, humid environments such as forests, fields, and gardens. That's where they like to live. Warm places, humid places, a little bit of moisture in the air. And that's where they thrive. That's where they do very, very well. They tend to repopulate very, very well. These glowing beetles, so they're a beetle, are most visible at dusk, and then dusk during summer, dusk being the period between day and night, kind of as day is fading into night. You get this lovely rosy glow to the sky, or different colors that can come out on different days depending on how light is refracting, I guess. But yeah, you that time of day is when the lightning bugs come out, and especially in rural areas, rural being out in the country a bit, not in the city. City being urban, rural being outside, where there's really not a lot of houses, not a lot of businesses. There's a lot of just kind of nature. Their light results from a chemical reaction between a compound called luciferin and an enzyme called luciferase. So that's a little bit of the science of it. This light, this bioluminescence, is a result of a chemical reaction. And that reaction is between a compound, so two or more things that are being put together in science will be called a compound, called luciferin, which is meaning light-bearing. Lucifer means light-bearing, this particular item, and an enzyme, which is an essential item how do we describe this? A protein that you need for certain biological actions and reactions, especially when you're trying to digest food or certain aspects of metabolism. We'll use enzymes. And this particular enzyme is called luciferase, and it causes a reaction to produce light. You need to get the oxygen involved, and it produces light using this oxygen and the compound called luciferin.
So there you go. That's the chemical reaction that's going on inside these animals. Of course, again, this is all natural. I also read that luciferase, they react with oxygen as well. So that's another, of course, important thing, as many things react with oxygen when we're talking about living things. It says when these substances react with oxygen in specialized light organs, they produce a cold light that appears yellow, green, or pale red, depending on the species. So there you go, multiple different colors, depending on the type of animal that we're talking about. Because I think we say glowflies or things like that, fireflies or glowworms or lightning bugs. But there's several different types, probably depending on what part of the world we're talking about. I'm sure the fireflies in Asia are slightly different from the ones you might see out there in the fields in North America. And the light that they produce, it's described as a cold light, meaning it's just not hot, like the candle light, like light from a burning flame. That would be a hot light, but this is a cold light. So, in other words, if you catch a firefly in your hand, it's not going to burn you the way that if you put your hand around the flame on a candle. And the light can change depending on the species. It says, unlike artificial lights, which waste energy as heat, fireflies produce light without generating heat, making it energy efficient and safe for their delicate bodies. There you go, absolutely. Because they are living things, they're producing a light that doesn't burn. And so this is unlike or different from artificial lights, man-made lights, electrical lights, candles, fire, whatever. All of those are artificial or man-made or, produced in other ways, not from a process of biology. But they all produce heat as well. Anyone who's ever tried to change a light bulb just after it burns out knows that the light bulb will still be hot. And of course, you all know that candle flame and anything like that is also hot. But this firefly light, this bioluminescent light created by these animals, they make light without creating or generating or producing heat, making it energy efficient and safe for their delicate bodies. You wouldn't want to burn yourself by making your own light in your own body. No. That would not really be a very good sort of biological system to be in charge of. All right, let's take a break here, and we will go over to the Chinese teacher and then listen to the second part of the article.
Hello everyone, 我是 Patrick. 今天讲解的是 Glowing Wonders, How Fireflies and Anglerfish Shine. 好，这就是要告诉我们关于萤火虫还有灯笼鱼为什么会发光。好，大家有没有看过萤火虫？有看过的话，上次是在哪看到的？ 那我生活在台北，其实没有什么机会看到。那如果有机会看到的听众，应该真的非常幸运。不过大家知道，其实萤火虫呢，并不是唯一身体会发光的生物。这个单元还介绍了另外一种，也就是 anglerfish。那在这个灯笼鱼身上，我们也可以看得到光。不过要看到灯笼鱼其实并不容易，因为它是深海的生物。好，那透过今天的文章，我们可以了解萤火虫为什么会发光，还有呢，他们所面临的生存危机。好，我们一起来看学习重点吧。请同学看到第一段，这里呢，第一个句子就先告诉我们，大自然当中有一些生物呢，有一种很特殊的能力，就是自己会发光。那这种生物它的发光现象，我们把它稱為 bioluminescence。同學看到 bio 大概就知道跟生物有關。那 lumin 這個部分的話，同學看到的時候常常都會知道，這個呢跟光線是有關的。好像譬如說 illuminate 是吧？好，這個都跟光有關係的字。好，那再來我們看到第三個句子，這裡呢就課文清楚的指出來說，有發光的生物裡面有兩個重要的代表性的例子，分別呢是螢火蟲還有燈籠魚。那在第一段的第四個句子呢，清楚的點出來整篇文章到底要做什麼，就是讓我們知道，好，這 their lifestyles， 這個 their 所指的當然就是前面這兩種螢火蟲還有燈籠魚兩種生物，他們的生活方式 their lifestyles and reasons for glowing， 還有就是到底為什麼會發光，其實是有很大的不同的。好，那作者在比較的時候呢，他的做法是先說明其中一種，再說明另外一種。第一天課文裡面呢，先說明的就是螢火蟲，所以我們看到第二段第一個句子就先講到 Fireflies are insects found on every continent。好，每個州上面呢，我們都可以看得到 Fireflies 螢火蟲。好，但有一個沒有，就是 Antarctica 南極洲。好，那請同學呢看到第二個句子，這裡的動詞 thrive。那 thrive 呢，當然就是活得很好啊。那因此我們可以解讀成在哪些區域呢會看得到這些螢火蟲，特別容易看得到在溫暖潮濕的地方。好，要請同學特別注意的是第四個句子 Their light results from a chemical reaction between a compound。 好，為什麼要特別注意呢？因為在第一段的第四個句子已經說明了嘛，說明說這個螢火蟲還有燈籠魚他們的生活方式以及發光原因很不一樣，所以呢在講到發光方式或發光原因的時候，我們都要特別的注意。那第四個句子所說明的就是螢火蟲到底為什麼會發光，原來啊是有一種叫做熒光素的化合物和一種呢叫做熒光素酶的這種酵素，它們產生了化學反應。再來請同學看到第六個句子，第六個句子類似像這樣的句子 unlike 什麼開頭的，或者 like 開頭的，那老師要提醒大家做閱測的時候特別把這種句子畫起來。為什麼？這個 unlike 算是一個提示，因為它在做比較。那比較呢通常都是我們在出題的時候喜歡出的考點，讓我們知道螢火蟲的光跟一般的人造光是不一樣的。那後面逗點這個關係子句算是附帶說明，讓我們知道人造光有什麼特色，而不是用來區別哪一種人造光。這裡所講的就是人造光呢，基本上它都會呢浪費掉一些能量。為什麼？因為呢就會是變成熱能了，那所以就算是浪費掉了。那可是螢火蟲沒有這個問題， Fireflies produce light without generating heat。 它們螢火蟲在發光的時候呢是不會產生熱的，所以才會說沒有所謂浪費的問題。
All right, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back. So we find out that the glowing light, this bioluminescence of fireflies, serves crucial purposes. It's very, very important. It's something it absolutely has to have in its day-to-day life. So how is that? Well, first, it is a tool for communication. When you communicate, you talk or you signal to someone else and you get back and forth in a conversation with them. That is the communication a lot of times. So you might do it through signals, you might do it through talking. And when we talk about communication here for the fireflies, they're flashing their little butts at people or other fireflies, I guess would be more important for them. And that is their tool, their method, the thing they use for communication, how they talk to their buddies over across the field, especially during mating season. Mating season is that period of time when they're looking for a partner. They want to have babies. They want to make sure there's lots more fireflies. Not that we get to the urban situation where you don't see fireflies around. They want to make many, many more. So if you just leave them alone and let them glow at one another to say, hey, here I am, they'll probably do their job and do it right. Each species has its own flashing pattern to attract males. This I did not know. Different species flash with different rhythms. It's kind of like if you think of the Native Americans when they had the communication that they would use through fires, where they would cover the fire, or they would send smoke signals up in the air. There would be different patterns that would be sent up in the air to communicate to other folks around. Here you have fireflies doing that. And why are they doing that? They're looking for their mates. They're looking for their partners. These light signals are like romantic messages in the night.
Very, very nice. Because, of course, you don't want to attract the wrong kind of firefly.
No.
That would be really embarrassing. I mean, imagine going out on a date and you discover a chimpanzee turns up. This is not the right type of animal for me, you would say to yourself. So they want to attract the right type of firefly, not one that's just close. No, exactly the right one. So, of course, they know all these messages, and the color of the light would also be another clue. Furthermore, or in addition, and their glow can act as a warning to potential predators, indicating that they might taste bad or be toxic. Now, again, this is something that many animals do, especially the smaller, weaker animals. They might color themselves in all sorts of shocking ways. I think frogs are famous for this, right? Coming in all sorts of strange colors. And the colors, whether it's true or not, but the colors might indicate to bigger, badder animals that might be looking for a tasty snack, don't eat me. Look at my colors. I must taste really, really bad. I don't taste nice and delicious. I taste bitter and sour or something like that. So that's another thing, because, of course, glowing is a good way to attract mates, but it's also a good way to show where you are in the middle of the night. And so if there's a lizard or some other insect-eating animal out there, that might draw them to you. But if they think that the light means you taste bad, they probably will ignore you and let you go on your date. Unfortunately, fireflies are facing serious threats from habitat destruction as wetlands disappear under urban development. Isn't this a common story that we often see?
Common story.
When talking about animals, especially animals that live in areas that humans also like to live in. So areas with forests and rural areas that suddenly become suburbs and towns and farms, and trees get cut down, and places where fireflies would normally live disappear. That's habitat destruction. And one of the big problems around the world is wetlands. Wetlands are kind of those areas around rivers where the land isn't completely covered with water, but it's kind of swamp, it's marsh, it's bog. We have different words for areas that are sort of half land, half water. You can't build a road there. You can't build a house there. It'll sink into the swamp. But also you can't use it for transportation because it's not a nice, big, wide, deep river that you can, float a boat down. But wetlands are incredibly important for ducks, for birds, for insects, for frogs, for amphibians, for all sorts. And in many parts of the world, people are discovering this and realizing this. And so wetland protection is something that you do see a lot of people talking about because wetlands are very, very important. They keep entire ecosystems very, very healthy, but unfortunately, they're not very useful for human development. But, there are more important things than building more suburbs. Light pollution also confuses fireflies and disrupts their mating signals, of course. Lights at night from city lights and cars and buildings and all sorts of other things. that can be very confusing. We've all seen insects gathering around lights in the middle of the night, and that can cause all sorts of problems for them because these animals, of course, have been around for billions of years, millions or billions of years when they didn't have lights at night that weren't natural. They didn't have artificial electric light, so it can cause confusion for animals. And pesticides and climate change further endanger their populations around the world. So we spray chemicals on crops to keep them nice and fresh and looking good and not being eaten by bugs. Those are the pests. And a pesticide is a chemical that kills insects that eat things. So we all like to have our apples without any holes in them and our lettuce without the leaves all chewed up by worms. So pesticides are useful to keep some things nice, but they can also poison other animals and poison the environment. And then climate change, as the climate changes, as temperatures change, as the seasons change, the growing patterns, the mating patterns, the times in the year when these animals produce their young, that can also change, be altered, and be shortened so that they're no longer able to go through their natural life cycle. So all of this stuff, mainly based on things that humans do, these are endangering the populations of fireflies, and that's sad.
That is very, very sad, and that's why conservation efforts are vital to protect these wonderful creatures. They are wonderful creatures. They're absolutely magical. If you've ever sat and watched them kind of dot the sky around you when you're, or actually probably more likely the woods around you, right? If you're sitting in a field, they might come up and land on you. They might light up all around your area, and you're like, oh my gosh. As a kid, we would catch fireflies, so we were actually part of the problem, probably.
Hey.
But yeah, I mean, fireflies are absolutely wonderful creatures. So there do need to be conservation efforts to try to keep those wetlands around, to try to prevent too much urban development, to try to limit light pollution, to try to limit the overuse of pesticides that can do damage, and to try and help the climate kind of stay in a little bit better shape. That's what we need to do to take care of those fireflies and their glowing butts. Somebody who does not have a glowing bottom is our Chinese teacher. We're going to listen to them now.
好，那再来第三段的第一个句子算是主题句哦，请同学特别注意，这里告诉我们说萤火虫它发光是有几个重要的目的的，同学找到了吗？好，这里有几个重要提示，包括第二句的 first， 请圈起来。好，那这里就讲到第一个目的就是 a tool for communication， 可以当作沟通之用，特别呢是他们在求偶的时候。再来，请看到第5个句子 ，furthermore 也请画起来，这也是一个重要的提示词，让我们知道呢，这算是另外一个目的。萤火虫的光，那可以用来警告 predators， 那让呢，就是等于是他们的天敌不要来靠近他们。Their glow can act as a warning to potential predators。好，那再来，请同学看到第6个句子，这个 unfortunately， 这也是一个非常重要的提示。我们看到 unfortunately 的时候，就要注意，哇，文章要有一个重要的转折了。Fireflies are facing serious threats from habitat destruction。好，也就是萤火虫它面临的重要威胁来自于哪里呀？就是它们的栖息地受到破坏了。好，那再来，萤火虫还面临了哪些问题呢？第7个句子有看到 light pollution， 那还有什么呢？ Pesticides and climate change， 这些都是萤火虫所面临的重大威胁。好，以上就是我们针对这一篇课文内容所做的中文讲解。See you next time.
The magic of fireflies has been discussed, the glow that they have. We're going to move on now, and we're going to talk about anglerfish tomorrow. If you would like to come back and join us again for English Digest, I'm Leah.
And I'm Mike.
See you.